Today in Locked On Red Wings, will Alex DeBrincat return to his elite goal-scoring form? We're going to do player previews on him, Ben Chiarot, and Alex Lyon.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. Scotty's also the host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And on today's episode, guys, we're going to be breaking down player profiles, player previews for Alex DeBrincat, Ben Chiarot, and Alex Lyon. Of course, the headliner in today's episode is Alex DeBrincat, and we will get to that in just 1 second. But before we can, I got to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Also want to thank you guys for making Locked On Red Wings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, and of course, here on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Scotty, today's episode, as I just teased, is going to be focusing on DeBrincat, Chiarot, and Lyon. We're starting off with Alex DeBrincat, and you know, he is a player that didn't live up to our expectations in the first year of his contract. I think it's fair to say that. You know, he was coming off a down year with Ottawa, where he only scored 27 goals, 39 assists for 66 points in 82 games. We thought he could come to Detroit, and we said realistically, we don't want to, force 40 goals back on him, but we thought over 30, closer to 35 is what we were hoping for. Well, last season, he had 27 goals, 40 assists, which was a career high in assists for 67 points. So just one more point than the year prior with the Ottawa Senators. Wasn't quite the season we were expecting, but he did impress us in other areas. So when talking about Alex DeBrincat, who is making $7.8 million for the next 3 years. I think he has three more years left on that deal, and he's only 26 years old. I guess the question is do we still expect him to bounce back to not 40 goal form, but get back to that 30, 35, close to 40 goal range?
Yeah, look, I mean, nobody can predict the future, but I think it's fair to have that be the expectation from the fan base. This was a player that was, I want to say, rather controversial, not for anything like off the ice or anything, just because of what expectations were versus what the Wings ended up getting. And we kind of went to bat a little bit for him, honestly, kind of a lot of bit during the regular season and explained to the fan base and at least tried our best to lay out that this is a lot more than just a goal scorer and that this season he provided a lot more outside of clearly goal scoring. And that while the scoring didn't live up to what we expected, he was a lot better in a lot of other areas. I think he was fine, like serviceable defensively. He looked a lot better in the neutral zone, which is something we talked about quite a bit, and obviously had a career high in apples. So yeah, like I think that this is a guy that when you look at, like what are we expecting out of him this year? Anybody that says, I think we should expect him to get back on track and score 30 plus goals, push 35 goals, I think is totally fair. Like you just pointed out, you're paying him a lot of money. He is one of the more expensive players on your entire team, in your entire organization. And the reason you paid him was for goal scoring. You did not pay him to have 40 assists and be good in the neutral zone. You didn't. And that's great that he did that. And I hope that he continues to be good at that. But at the end of the day, you paid him money to score goals. And especially, as we talked about a few weeks ago, with the amount of goals that walked out the door this offseason, I think it's even more imperative that the guy you paid $7.5 million to in the presumably the prime years of his career and is surrounded by a lot of talent, a lot of playmaking talent at that, right? Like he's going to be probably on a line with Raymond and Larkin, two guys that would love to rack up assists. Like there's so many reasons as to why I think it is completely understandable and acceptable for and I don't know, justifiable, whatever other word you want to throw out there, for the fan base to expect more goals out of him.
I think we should expect more goals out of him, especially when you pay him the way you do. Like, yeah, him getting a career high in assists was a really nice way for us to say, okay, he's not contributing goals the way we want to, but he's contributing elsewhere on the ice. And he did, right? Like you said, we went to bat for Alex DeBrincat. He picked up his pace a lot in the defensive zone, and just defensively in general, not just in the defensive zone.
Yeah.
But he backtracked hard. He forechecked really hard. A couple times he actually over-pursued. Like, he wasn't afraid to lay the body on, which is something that he's been well known for. He got into 2 fights this season. It was actually
dang right.
won a fight against Roman Yossi, who's a good 6 inches taller than him.
Sir.
He gets it from me.
Right.
But like the big problem with Alex DeBrincat is he streaky, right? He scored 9 goals in the first 7 games and then had multiple droughts throughout the season. He had a 9-goal drought, he had a 10-goal drought, and he also had a 16-game drought where he scored just 1 goal. And it's not just the goals that dry up then either. Like, his assists really dry up too. In that same 16-game stretch where he scored 1 goal, he only had 5 assists. This is a guy who plays top 6 minutes, so it's not like the minutes aren't there. So the big thing we got to see out of Alex DeBrincat this season is that puck getting back to the back of the net more. And I do think that another year in the system and having better teammates will help that, because he will have better teammates this year, right? Whether it be on the top line with Larkin and Raymond, who he played a bulk majority with last year already, another year in that system can only help him. Raymond getting better can only help him. Dylan Larkin playing a full season can only help him. Same thing with the second line. If he gets bumped down to the second line and plays with the classic Patrick Kane pairing. Another year in the system for both of those guys with JT Compher as a center. Like, I do think that he absolutely has what it takes to get back across that 30-goal threshold, because we also admit in our defense of Alex DeBrincat that he was pretty unlucky a lot of the times. Because how often did he go to the right spots and then get stoned, or by some miracle it hit the post? I remember one specific instance that I brought up a couple weeks ago where he dangled past a defenseman, dangled the goalie, and still managed to hit the near side post. Yep. Like, that was something that was just so common when watching Alex DeBrincat play. So it's one of those situations where, like, he does everything right. He's not disappearing because he's lazy. He's almost disappearing because either he's unlucky or because his shot misses the net. And that's another thing too, is he gets into the right spot a lot of times. And he also, on top of hitting the post, is just as liable to miss the net short side. Yeah. So, like, if he just gets that puck on net more often, that puck's going to go in, because he's always where he needs to be in the offensive zone. So I have full confidence that he can get back across the 30-goal threshold and hopefully to at least 35 goals. And if he does, that's going to go a heck of a whole lot of way. I keep trying to say that. It's going to go very far to helping. It's going to go a long way to getting the Red Wings back to the goal-scoring markers that they need to get to stay relevant in the Eastern Conference wildcard race / Atlantic Division race. So I guess when it comes to, like, previewing, he's going to stay a top 6. He's going to stay a top power play member. I would assume he might swap off with Tarasenko in the top power play depending on their production, but he's going to be power play 1 or 2 on the left side all season long. That's just where he's top 6 material. He's a goal scorer. He just needs to find the back of the net more. Yeah, no, and this is as you kind of alluded to there, like, this is a guy that if he just went bar down instead of bar up a few times, he's looking at probably a 30-goal season. He was very fond of the post this past year. Cat was, unfortunately. So yeah, there was a lot of expected goals stuff that Yzerman talked about, and how he kind of expects water to find its level a little bit with Cat. And I think, again, it's totally fair to have that be the expectation and to kind of ask for that out of him. Oh yeah, I'm asking for it out of him. Yeah. I mean, it's like I said, it is fantastic the way he found other ways to contribute on the ice. But at the end of the day, you're paying him almost $8 million to put 35 plus goals in the back of the net, and he only put 27 in. So you need him to show up more consistently. You know, not just get a hat trick and then disappear for 5 games. Like, on a consistent basis, be a threat out there to score. Scotty, Let's head to a quick break. When we return, let's move on to Ben Chiarot, another polarizing defenseman on their back end. We'll talk about that in segment 2 of Locked On Red Wings. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets that much faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. You can save up to 60% off buying tickets, last-minute tickets for sports, comedy, concerts, and theater, so much more. With their last-minute deals, and you can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or the event with their flash deals. And they also have a thing called zone deals that help you save even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats. And if you toggle that feature in the settings, you can get the total upfront, fees included, so nothing shocks you at checkout. That's their all-in pricing. So go check out Game Time and take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty, let's talk about Ben Chiarot. Now, Ben Chiarot last year with the Detroit Red Wings was on a very polarizing second pair with Jeff Petrie. They kind of routinely got not nearly as difficult minutes as Moritz Seider and Jake Walman's pair did, but pretty difficult minutes throughout the season. And they routinely seemed like they got exposed. In fact, the numbers back up the fact that that pair got exposed pretty often. He's going into his third year on a 4-year deal that pays him $4.75 million. He is 33 years old, going into his age 34 season, as he'll turn 34 after the season ends. So if they make the playoffs, then he'll turn 34. And last season with the Detroit Red Wings, he had 20 points, 5 goals, 15 assists in 77 games played. Scotty, can Ben Chiarot help cement the top pair?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I think this conversation is a lot more similar to the Petrie conversation than it is like he's definitely going to be the answer at the top pair, if that makes sense. I have legitimate concerns about this. This is very, everybody talks about the second pair. We talk about the second pair all the time. We talk about, Petrie's just kind of there by default, unfortunately, because they don't have anyone else to fill the role. Why is that not just the exact same conversation here for the top pair? Is Ben Chiarot a top pair defenseman on a really good hockey team? Probably not at this point in his career. And on top of that, we have seen this pair be really bad. This is not like, oh, well, they were really good to end last season, so it must just be all sunshine and rainbows. We don't have to worry about it. No, the first time we tried it, they were bad. So, like, this, I don't know. I feel like a lot of attention is on the second pair just because it's Petrie and, like, the name and, like, all the reaction to how poor he played down the stretch, especially last season. I agree with it. Again, we've talked about that at length already. But, like, the fact that this is just, it's just going to be Seider and Chiarot and it's just going to be fine is wild to me. Like, I think this is, I'm not saying it is it is like copy and paste the exact same as the Petrie situation, but I think it's a lot closer than maybe we're liking to admit at this point in the season. This pairing, Seider and Chiarot, obviously have been solid together, and they've also really struggled together. And they really struggled together when Chiarot was 2 years younger than he is going into this season. Like, I think it's very far from just a slam dunk that this is going to be the pair for the season and it's all going to work out. We're not going to have any questions or concerns about it. Now, to be more optimistic, they were fine down the stretch last year. And Seider and Chiarot have clearly shown more recently that they have been able to work together and be fine together. And that should be the plan going into opening night. And I hope that it works out for the remainder of the season. But I don't think there's a soul that thinks that this is a long-term option, or B, is like just 100% confident in it.
Yeah, I think they are he is a presumptive top pair defenseman as it stands right now with Moritz Seider, and that is because of, as you put, a lack of options, right? Like, who else are you going to put on that top pair? Obviously, Simon Edvinsson comes to mind, right? Everyone wants that to be your top pair, but I don't think they're going to thrust Simon Edvinsson right into the type of deployments that Moritz Seider is getting. Because Moritz Seider, yes, he played top pair minutes his very first year with the Detroit Red Wings, but he wasn't getting nearly the type of difficult deployments that he is getting right now. Nowhere close. They're not going to thrust Edvinsson as functionally a rookie into that kind of role until he proves it. And it might take 40 games for him to prove it. It might take 82 games for him to prove it, which leaves you with who on your left side to play top pair? You're not putting Olli Maatta in that role. You're not putting Albert Johansson in that role. It's Ben Chiarot. He is your only option. And that's where, like you said, that's the similarities with Jeff Petrie. It goes, who is your better option? And again, that is an indictment on the roster construction. When we talk about criticisms of Steve Yzerman, that is one of them. He overpaid for a defenseman to be a top pair D-man who ultimately is not. There are intangibles, though, that Ben Chiarot does bring to the locker room, right? Everyone hates the intangibles argument, but he's not afraid to block shots. He's not afraid to play the body. He's not afraid of standing up for his teammates, right? Lest we forget, Raymond and Chiarot went at it in practice. And then the very next game, who was the very first teammate in a scrum to defend Lucas Raymond? It was Ben Chiarot. Ben Chiarot sticks up for his teammates. There's a reason why he wears a letter with this team, because he has leadership capabilities. And he's an intimidating guy to play against. But that does not equate to a top pair defenseman. And unfortunately, I don't know if he can cement the top pair, right? I think he will be adequate. I think he will be better than what we saw out of Jake Wollman last year, because Jake Wollman very quickly showed us last year in those 60 whatever games that Seider and Wollman played together, that Wollman can't handle those defensive zone deployments. And of course he can't. He's not a defensive zone defenseman. He's not a defense-first defenseman. He's more of an offensive-minded defenseman. And he was put against Kucherov in the defensive zone, and the other team's elites all the time. So once Jake Wollman ultimately got hurt and then scratched for whatever reasons that was, Chiarot took over. And like you said, I was like, oh no, we saw this last year, man. Like, this is going to be a disaster. It actually wasn't. Chiarot and Seider, and maybe it was just the contrast with how lost Wollman looked at times, but Chiarot and Seider looked like a much more competent pair. Chiarot looked better on the top pair with Seider in more difficult deployments than he did with Jeff Petrie in weaker deployments. Not weak deployments, but weaker by comparison. And the numbers back that up. The Seider-Chiarot pair had and it was still a negative Corsi 4 percentage relative, because how could it not be with the deployments they were getting? But it was better than the Corsi 4 percentage relative that Chiarot and Jeff Petrie had in 68 games was negative 5.43. That is egregious. Their Corsi 4 percentage, just flat out, not relative, was like 40%. It's crazy low. And with Seider, it was negative 1.53 and 45%. Like, still not great. Of course, you want to be over 50% with all those metrics, right? Or over 0 with relative metrics. But the point still being is that was an improvement for Ben Chiarot, despite playing much more difficult usage. Because one, Seider's a better defenseman, but two, because their chemistry between those two players was much better. So I do expect Ben Chiarot and Seider to be a better top pair than Wollman and Seider were this last year. But that doesn't mean I'm saying they're going to be a good pair. That doesn't mean I'm saying that Ben Chiarot is going to be a top pair defenseman, because on most other teams, he'd be a second pair at best. But it's one of those situations where that's just who you have. I'm expecting more of the same from Ben Chiarot. He's going to continue to be a physical presence, a leader on the ice and in the locker room, and he's going to continue to frustrate you when he leaves his position to go apply that physicality. But that's just Ben Chiarot in a nutshell, baby. Like, he is what he is, and I think he will continue to be that for better and for worse. We had a saying, right? Ben Chiarot giveth, and Ben Chiarot taketh away, and we're just going to continue to see that. And it's not the best situation. I'm not going to lie to you guys. It's not the best situation. Same with the second pair, which is why we were banging the drum all offseason. You got to improve the top four, especially the second pair, and it didn't really happen. But this is the situation as it stands, and Chiarot will be serviceable.
I agree.
Sorry, I know that was a long monologue. I didn't think I was that impassioned about Chiarot, but it started talking, and
yeah, same. I didn't realize I was either. But
let's head to another quick break, and when we return, we'll talk about Alex Lyon, our second of 3 goaltenders. Stay tuned to Locked On Red Wings. Got to talk to you guys today about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty, would you like to join me, or am I doing this solo?
I was trying to find the Brian is bald banner.
The ticker? Yeah.
And then I lost track of time, and then there we were. So
idiot. Alex Lyon, Scotty, he was for about a month and a half. He was the savior of the Detroit Red Wings. They're winning games because he was playing absolutely out of his mind. He was one of the best goalies in the league in that month and a half where he was absolutely electric. He's on the second and final year of a $900,000 contract. He is, 30, exactly where is it? 32 years old. He'll be turning 33 in December. And Alex Lyon, what do you think is his role going to be this season? What's the real Alex Lyon?
Well, I would imagine the real Alex Lyon is the one with the much greater sample size. I would imagine the real Alex Lyon is probably the one that we saw from when he entered the league until like a year and a half ago. Like you said, he's in his early 30s, kind of approaching his mid 30s there. He's not exactly like a young up and comer that has figured it out and is going to be really good for the next 10 years either. I would love to get another year out of Alex Lyon and get another year of, kind of being that safety valve and having the ability to go on hot streaks. But like, that's kind of what my expectation is. I'm not going into the season expecting Alex Lyon to be what he was last year. I think the team is honestly, I think it is a massive failure of an offseason if Alex Lyon needs to do what he did again last year, this year. Mm-hmm. I think that is a failure to construct a roster if we just go through this season and, the other two goalies suck and Lyon needs to be Superman again. I think that's a failure to prepare for this season, given what the goalie situation has looked like for most of the last 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. So like, I think, what am I expecting out of him? I'll tell you what I'd like to see. All I really want to see is a guy who's able to again, like, go on hot streaks and be really good for some stretches. And by the end of the season, if he's around a 900, then he's around a 900. I think that's still a win. And it's still already a very successful contract given out by the front office. But I don't think that we should go into the season and be like, well, Lyon needs to be the 1A again, because at the end of the day, like there's a reason he wasn't that for the first 10 years of his career, and I'm not sure that that's the best recipe for success there, even despite what he did last season.
Right. In a perfect world, Alex Lyon is your third string goalie. And that's not a slight against him. That's just looking at his track record in the NHL. But I think it goes into this year, in my opinion, I think he is the presumptive, number two. I think he will ultimately split time with Ville Husso as like a 2A, 2B situation. I don't know. I'm pretty confidently giving Cam Talbot the net starting out because I don't have faith really in either of these goalies to secure.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean what Alex Lyon did last year wasn't impressive, right? Like, this is a guy who throughout his career has been an AHL goaltender. Last year, he played 44 games. He played over half of a full NHL season as the starting goalie for the Detroit Red Wings. Like, that is incredible for what he did, and he did so and still put up a .904 save percentage, which was just a tick below league average. And in the month of January, as I said, dude was the best goalie in the league, and it began to fade down the stretch in February and more so in March before coming back strong at the end, just like everybody else in April. Like, he was, for a big portion of this, the big portion of the season last year, the Red Wings savior. But to expect him to be that based on everything that we know and have seen of Alex Lyon is unfair. I think what Alex Lyon is what he's always been. And as you put it, he is a streaky goaltender who has been a career AHLer. Now, I think he has carved himself out a niche in the NHL. I think his AHL days are probably behind him, barring a disastrous second year. I think he has carved himself out as a backup goaltender in the NHL, and that is thanks to his performance last year and thanks to his 15 games prior to the Stanley Cup playoffs the year before with the Florida Panthers. But this year, going at it with the Detroit Red Wings, I think he's going to still be fighting for the crease with Ville Husso and Cam Talbot because he still doesn't have the track record that Cam Talbot does. Cam Talbot still has the best track record out of any goalie on this roster. That's why going into the season, I think that Cam Talbot's probably your number one, and that it's going to be Ville Husso and Alex Lyon battling it out in training camp for who's going to get the backup starts. And I know Derek Lalonde is probably going to play hot hand, right? Like, if Alex Lyon or Ville Husso gets hot, he's going to run them until they get cold again. But I think that the competition in net is stiffer, and so I think his role is going to be a little bit reduced. That doesn't mean he can't get hot and be incredible again, but the streakiness is part of who Alex Lyon is. And you can't win a Stanley Cup with a goaltender who gets, you can, it has happened, I shouldn't say that, but it's not a good method to win a Stanley Cup to have a goaltender who can become the best goalie for a month and then disappear for a month and a half. So, and I do think he'll be a little bit better too, analytically speaking, in his backup role because the team in front of him got marginally better defensively. We had that conversation with Ville Husso too. But I just see his role being a little bit reduced just because the goalie competition is a little bit better, which is good because you don't want Alex Lyon to be starting 45 or playing in 44 games. Right. You don't want him starting 43 games. Like, that's not what you signed him to be. It's just what he was forced to become. So I love Alex Lyon, and by no means do I want this to come off as like Alex Lyon slander. I'm just trying to be realistic with what his role is probably going to be.
Yeah, no, I'm right there, lockstep with you. I think, hey, this is like a weirdly crowded goalie room, even though none of them are like presumed guaranteed 1A guys. Like,
right. And don't forget about Jack Campbell.
Right, like it's a low-key kind of a crowded room, but yeah, man, like I think this is already a wildly successful contract given out, even if he's like doesn't really do anything this year. Like, this is already, because of what he did in year one, like a very good job by the front office to bring him in and sign him to that contract. But yeah, I think this year, like if he can plug and play and go on some heaters again like he did last season, then that's probably the best case scenario here. And then along with that, the best case scenario for the flip side would be when he goes on his, valleys, when he trends down and struggles, that you hopefully one of the other two goalies are good enough to actually fill that void this season.
Correct.
Because they weren't last year. Nobody was. We had nothing.
Scotty, do you have any final thoughts on
I don't think so, man. We ball.
We do ball. We'll be back with a new episode on Friday. Continuing player previews. We're got to be close to halfway done. We have 3 episodes. We've done 5 episodes of player previews, 3 each. 5 times 3 is 15. So yeah, we're over halfway done already.
Good math.
So thank you. Everybody knows that I'm super smart.
Yep.
Stay tuned for that in Friday's episode of Locked On Red Wings. Same time, same place, your team, every day.
Every day.